Imagine blaming a mom who just gave birth because the child that she just gave birth to has a deformity. And there is the concept of lihe, which is the concept used to explain why some children are noted to have certain specific characteristics. Today, in this episode, we'll explore one disease causation in the Philippines called lihe. Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak in love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Rowan, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino-American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kapeng barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with American culture, talks about trauma-informed care, and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place. Hi everyone, this is Rowan, your host today for the Pinoy Love Language podcast. Kamusta? I hope you're doing fine. I have been enjoying just harvesting some edible plants in my garden. I have a broccoli, a cauliflower. I don't have a lot, and I don't know because this is my first year planting these plants. If once you harvest the cauliflower, would you get another piece of cauliflower from the same plant? If you know, email me at info@calamansijuice.com. But also, if you have any other topics that are of interest to you in regards to Filipino mental health, parenting, trauma, anything that relates around Pinoy love languages as well, please connect with me. The email would be in the show notes. So let's begin. Why is it important to understand causality of disease in the Philippines? You're probably thinking, but I'm in America, so why is this something that's important to learn? I noticed that even in America, just because somebody has been transplanted away from their motherland, meaning your ancestors, the first immigrants that came to America, maybe that's your lola, it could be your mom, doesn't mean that they've forgotten all of it. Perhaps they're using it less, or it might have given you a weird feeling like, huh? Well, why is it that I can't take a shower after wearing my socks the whole day, right? So stick around. Aside from lihe, bonus information that we'll be talking about is pasma. And pasma is the interaction between hot and cold elements, right? Which is one of the disease causation in the Philippines. So it's important for our mental health because similar in the Western culture, when we have diagnosis, usually the reason why we have that is to help practitioners to decide what's the best treatment outcome. So if you have a headache and you've had it for a long time and the doctor could not figure out what's the diagnosis, it would be a challenge to find a treatment because would you give that person Tylenol or would you give them something else? What is the real cause of it? So this is the reason why we're talking about this, as it also relates to our body and our mind. In reality, in more of the Eastern culture, there's a blending of mind, body, spirit, if you will. Unlike in the Western culture, there's a separation. But in reality, that's why the disease causation, like pasma that I'll be talking about, its element is of the body, of temperature, and it's really using both elements of the mind and the body that it speaks. They're talking to each other. And so the manifestation could be from both, right? Not just either or. We see often, or if you have a mental health, these are the things you need to observe. So let's begin. What is this lihe? Usually this begins with the woman being pregnant and she's basically really focus on an object, a thing, whatever she's focused on. And the key to a pregnant woman, they say, is that she needs to be made happy all the time. So the husband, there will be stories, and I think this is across culture where the wife would say, "Oh, I need a puto," right? Those spongy rice cake, but it has to have like gold sprinkles. And the wife is asking at 12 midnight. So the story would be like the husband would wake up and look at, knock on different stores just to give her what she needs. Otherwise, the baby might have some deformity, or she will not be happy. She'll focus her attention on something else that might contribute to maybe a negative characteristic of her unborn child. So, one of the reasons, right, that we want to keep culturally our pregnant women happy. And so I also remember growing up, you guys probably may not know Inday Badiday, but if you do know, shout out to you. You're coming from the same era. But she's like, it's like a e-magazine, but obviously on TV. And she'll show all the time Lihe women who maybe had a child, but the child had maybe one foot missing or some type of weird deformity. And the mother, usually when interviewed, would say, "Oh, that's because I kept looking at the crab. Now my child has an extra limb." Or someone might say, "Wow, let's say the child has some type of like too much overgrown hair. Oh, I kept looking at this monkey in the jungle." I don't know. I'm making that up. But that's lihe. That is the belief that the disease causation is that the pregnant mom actually caused it. And it's a hard thing, isn't it, to have that put on women, that they're super responsible for their baby, and we are at a certain extent, but there is science. There's also genetics that can explain deformity. But that's what I talked about in our couple of episodes before, how when there's no science yet, human phenomena is to look for explanation, to fill in the gap. And that's the purpose for disease causation. And one thing is that it's not always seen as negative. I've also seen in the culture, if someone had a baby who has Down syndrome, it may be perceived as a gift from God. It's lucky. And so mothers tend to them very well as if they're the lucky child. And one of the things I really love about the Filipino culture is parents teach their children, even if the ate has Down syndrome, the younger siblings are taught to be honoring of that ate. They still usually call them ate. And if they don't, they still are taught to respect her as the ate. Even though she has Down syndrome, like even though her mental age be younger than her siblings. So I think that's a wonderful thing. Now, before I proceed with Pasma, I want you just to stick around and we'll do a quick commercial break. Diyan ka lang. This episode is brought to you by Story Therapy. This is therapy and coaching blended together that hugs neuroscience, creativity, and honoring the wisdom of your body to heal. It's a 3-month framework that includes 10 one-on-one sessions with me. To check out if we're a good fit, see the link in the show notes for a complimentary consult. As promised, let's talk more about pasma. So again, pasma is the interaction between hot and cold elements, right? If you heard your mom, wag ka munang maligo because your feet are still tired. So don't take a shower yet. Give it a break. Many years growing up, this has been the prescription of not just by my mom, but other moms, right? Otherwise, you'll get veins or varicose veins in your legs. So I think there is actually something to that, even though some of our disease causation might be just a way to fill the gap. some of them actually Western research are catching up on. So they're not all just a way to explain. They're not all bogus. Some of them are really like based on something, and we're getting a little bit more science and data around it. So I think one of these I think Pasma falls under this, that perhaps Western culture would have a little bit more statistical information, even if it's qualitative information around it. So also we say when your hand is sweaty, someone will say, I'm pasmado, right? So if you have been washing, like washing dishes or washing clothes by hand, usually you never want to iron, right? Because it's the mixture of wet and then it's hot, right? So cold and those types of elements do not mix together. So, in other words, culturally, Filipinos are very sensitive to temperature. Timpla. It's almost like if you're mixing juice and you're using powder. So you're making sure that the mixture is just the right component. You want to make sure that they have the right ratio. So if you put powder, maybe there's not enough or there's too much water, then you add a little bit powder. And so you're kind of like trying to make sure it has the perfect mixture. So going back with temperature, right? For babies, usually we have this word mahahamugan, which is cold air would enter usually the head. So we say that especially infants at a certain time during the day, we want to bring them inside kasi baka mahamugan, right? Baka magkasakit. They might catch some type of disease. We also say because it's very humid in the Philippines and usually facilities have air conditioning unit. So we'd say that if you're so sweaty, don't enter a facility that's fully air conditioned, super cold, kasi magkakasakit ka. You'll get sick. We always say that. And also, I grew up also hearing this. I never really practice it, but I remember some of our house helpers would do this when they have menstruation period. They would not bathe themselves for how many days they have their period because the belief is that water is cold and it would get into their head and they might go crazy. I hope you found this information helpful as far as really understanding Filipino culture, the way we explain disease, and also it extends to the way we access or don't access care, whether it's physical care or mental health care. It helps to give us an explanation. So thank you for being here. Please don't forget to leave an email, a voicemail. You can even leave a voicemail. If you have any questions for me, or if you want to just give me suggestions for future topics that I would happily consider, check the show notes. All the information is there. Go check the blog. I write a lot about Filipino cultural nuances, parenting at iba pa. It's been great. Again, this is Rowan. Salamat at sa ulitin.